So good morning. Welcome to the last breakout session. And as we begin, and as we settle in, I'd like us to begin with a conversation starter. I know we've looked for ways to converse with our neighbors as we've sat through this session, and today I'll just give you one. And since we've had a lot of inspiration and poking, I want to continue with that trend a little bit. And please find a neighbor. And I would like you to have a short conversation. Whether it's a debate, I don't know. But I would like to ask this question. Do you think that development aid system as is disempowering? Do you think the development aid system as it is disempowering? So discuss that with your neighbor. All right. So for those joining us, we're just having a brief discussion or conversation on do we feel the current development aid system is disempowering? All right. And so I would like to just get some brief responses from the crowd. Anyone want to give it a go?
So my name is Ida from Studio Institute in Zimbabwe, and I feel, yes, in its current state, current development system is disempowering. This, as was alluded to this morning and shared extensively, the power dynamics and being made to seem as though money and having money then gives you the right to then dictate and determine, what kind of development, what development should look like. And then also underappreciating or not valuing what other assets or important resources that others bring to the table.
Thank you. Any other go? One more person? Yes, at the front here.
We say that it depends really how one looks at it. When the aid is like seed money, investment, startup, then it's empowering. But if it's and that is startup and with no stringent rules, then it's empowering. But when then you are being given every time, and then of course you are like following everything they being said, you're not questioning. It's a question of saying, if they say jump, if you're able to say, why should I jump, then it's empowering. But you say, how high, then it's empowering.
I love that example.
Yeah.
And thank you. And I think that's why we're here, because we're basically asking ourselves, how do you feel the system is now? Is it empowering? Is it disempowering? And with the changes that we are seeing within the spaces we are in, how do we begin to define the system that is aligned and responds to the ever-changing context that we're working in? And so that's ideally what we're going to have a conversation about. And today is a day for being practical, being pragmatic, and demonstrating some of the amazing work that continues to happen. But even as we show and demonstrate that work, we want to also talk about the realities that system change takes time. That system change means we have to take collective action. And what does that look like? And my hope is that then we can have a conversation around that. And so I want to invite on stage an amazing group of practitioners who are walking the talk. And I'll ask them to get on stage. And even as they do that, I just want to set a context of where they're coming from with this conversation. And I love the way Jenny set the stage, because this is work that then we have been exploring as Global Fund. for community foundations and looking at, when we're talking about alternatives and when you're talking about reorganizing the way work or development systems have been, what does that look like? And it was a great opportunity for me to be able to partner with Global Fund for Community Foundations, just to look at what is currently happening when we say we are looking for alternative ways to resource the work we do as civil society. And it was an honor to do it in Tanzania. And the study, when we were doing it, we said, it's going to be a study that should be a conversation starter. So what we're doing here is, many may have come to hear the results of the study, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we are advancing that conversation. Because some of the things that came out is that there are amazing concepts of models that could begin to shift how we do development. But the question is, where is the infrastructure? How are we supporting these systems? And what is the narrative that we continue to use that continues to cause this new model not to be seen? Right. So having said that, I want to introduce myself. Like, who are you? So I'm Susan Jambi, a strong believer in community development, and that community is what is going to change the work that we do. And so I work with Lusoma Advisory Services, and what we do is support local organizations to understand their value, to understand their relevance, and support them to be able to know how to have a seat at the table and engage in the development conversation. And my panelists, please encourage them. They have a hard task today of leaving you inspired as they get on stage. So I'll ask each one of them to introduce themselves. And as we do so, I would love to know what has been your role in working towards shifting how development is done at the level that you work. So please, we'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, Susan, for giving me this opportunity to share my story. I'm Jonathan. Jonathan Kifunda. I work for Ubuntu Africa Initiatives, a local-based organization in Tanzania. So my story is really connected with the organization that I work for, and I'm going to divide it into two major categories. The first is about me and Ubuntu, and the second is really a work that is connected to shift the power and community philanthropy. So the story about Ubuntu, it started in takes us back to 2014 when the organization emerged. And the reason of the emergence of the organization, it was being unhappy, you know, with what I was personally doing, being an employee in one of the large organizations, big organization, and being at a very high level. I was used to only discuss issues at a very high level, something which was not actually my core for the service. And I got unhappy, and I had to really decide to move, and I decided to start to initiate an organization which will take me to the ground and work on the ground. So basically, one of the things that made me to be unhappy was the way I was relating with the community. It was much of the top-down approach, receiving funding from wherever, big donors, and taking them to the ground and pretending that I am very knowledgeable on the issues that are happening in the communities. And I'm able to create and craft all the solutions that are needed. So that made me to be unhappy. So the design and the way I crafted the organization that I wanted to work for, which is the one that I'm working for now, it was real to challenge that way of working. And I wanted to make sure that I embrace the community to come up with their own solutions and make their own change. Something which appeared in the mission and vision of the organization. Few years later, because I was believing in the collaboration with other people, and I had friends from Europe whom I engaged in the growing of the organization, and they were like, Jonathan, if you make your organization to look like you want to be real independent, to minimize the support from the north, then you will not get money. So what you need to do is actually to make it soft. Don't be too radical that you want to shift. Try to be a little bit diplomatic so that you can get money, and we can support you from that. So because it was very appealing, I had to agree that okay, I think this is the very good move. I have to. But I didn't know that by that time is when I was starting losing my power, because I allowed other people to come and distort what I was thinking and what was my passion. And so from 2016 up to around 2018, I was actually doing things that I was not even knowing what I'm doing, because they were not even my things. Because these guys, they had changed all the vision and the mission of the organization, even the values. Now you see, at some point you find yourself not being you. Actually, you are just like a dead body. You are walking on the road, but you are just not living because someone else is remoting you. So until 2019, when I bumped up to Jenny, and I appreciate you so much, Jenny, and then Jenny also handed me over to Tarisai. And these guys, they did quite a lot of work to mentor me and to really show me how community philanthropy work. And it's when I was like slapped and got from the sleep, and I was like, isn't this what I was thinking when I was initiating the organization? You see? So I started slowly to ask myself and question myself and involved in the board and the team. And we went back to the initial vision and mission that we had created, and we realized that we had lost the way a long time ago. So the whole of 2019, 2020, we were getting back to the track and to make sure that we bring back the organization to life. And in 2021, we started implementing our project by following the community philanthropy ideology, I would say so. So we did two things. One, it was a study, a theoretical study, but second, it was the practical study of doing the community philanthropy. And the findings from the theoretical was very good, because almost 81% of the respondents, they accepted that they are willing to get involved in their work, in the work of development through community philanthropy. And in one of the communities that I work with, they brought a concern about a school toilet for girls. So I said, I think this is an opportunity. So I mobilized the community, and they were involved, and they started doing the, building up the toilet for girls, and it was successful. But before officially starting being used, I was approached by a girl who was in class 3, and she was like, Daddy, in the first 2 weeks I've been ill, contracted UTI, urinary transmitted infection. And the doctor said it's because I'm using dirty toilet. Now, I know this is not yet to be used, but can you allow me to start using this toilet? I want you to reflect on that. The weight of that message which this young girl came up with. So you might think it's just a small thing, it's just a toilet for girls. How can this guy come here and pump and say, yeah, as if it's something huge? But if you zoom in, you try to see this kind of messages, is when you realize the importance of the project that was done, and the appreciation that the beneficiaries or the people are getting. So the second is the message from the district commissioner, who handed over a certificate just because of that approach using the community philanthropy. We have been building toilets, over 15 of them, but just because of this, we're given that honor to showcase that this is something important. So, in general, that is the story about Jonathan and the Global Africa Initiatives and community philanthropy. I would say we reclaimed our power back, and that is what makes us happy to continue being ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And Jonathan just gives us an example of him beginning the steps of making change at the community level. And I want to invite Palestine, who has been at the mid-level of this conversation and working with organizations towards facilitating a process of this change that we are talking about. So Palestine, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm here representing NEAR, which stands for the Network of Empowered Aid Response. We are a movement of local and national non-governmental organizations from the Global South, rooted in our communities and who share a common goal of fair, equitable, and create a fair, equitable, and dignified system. Is this better? Sorry. Yes. Sorry. So our mission at NEAR fundamentally is to reinvent aid through innovative ideas, knowledge sharing, and influencing. And what we mean by reinventing aid and what that change looks like, as defined by NEAR, is a world where local communities have the resources and the agency to address challenges that impact them. We see localization at the heart of that change as a solution to the current challenges faced by the humanitarian and the development aid system. And we strive fundamentally to reshape that landscape by promoting local ownership and fostering equitable, dignified, and accountable partnerships. So I think the question that Susan had raised was, how do we do that practically at NEAR? What is our role? What has our role been to do that? And so NEAR's role has been to support this process by acting as conveners, as brokers, as incubators, and amplifiers of this movement in the Global South. As facilitators, we explore, design, and operationalize local funding mechanisms. As advisors, we provide technical assistance to support local funds. And as connectors, we seek to enable a learning and exchange environment. Our action areas focus on promoting direct resourcing to local actors, unblocking constraints to direct sources of funding from the demand side, and shifting that conversation away from just this linear supply side, which has been discussed rigorously the last couple of days. And it also involves us working with members to diversify their financial base and provide technical assistance, sometimes on a case-by-case basis, as requested by our members. We've done that through several mechanisms. So in terms of practically supporting this shift, we've done that through three key mechanisms so far. The first mechanism is through the Change Fund. The Change Fund is a dedicated global fund with infrastructure and systems to disperse resources directly to local actors responding to emergencies. So it's essentially a standby mechanism supported by a locally rooted early warning mechanism with a simplified grant making process that is community-centric and transparent. So usually by the time a crisis is declared within 8 days, we have declared a crisis, request, received and reviewed applications, and ultimately awarded grants to pre-approved near members. And fundamentally, the process was designed to be as agile, responsive, and adaptive to the needs of the community at the local level. So, practically speaking, thus far we've dispersed 1.9 million in funds to 13 grantees across Latin America, MENA, Asia, and Africa. The second mechanism that we promote and engage in to support this systems change is through the development and operationalization of localized financing mechanisms. We've done that in three instances. The oldest is the Bolsho Fund. It's a Somalia fund designed and operationalized in 2021. It works with communities across Somalia to solve, their own humanitarian and developmental challenges. It has a very participatory and inclusive process, and what's being funded are community verified initiatives. The second one is the Syria Solidarity Fund, which was just recently launched in March 2023, following the devastating earthquakes that happened, and we're continuing to, it's still a nascent fund, and so we're still continuing to support their establishment and providing them with the technical assistance, convening spaces with them, with donors to receive direct funding. And then the third mechanism that we haven't yet established, but we are currently working on, is the creation of technical working groups on innovative finance. And really what it is it's an advisory committee that will have members from the 4 different regions globally that will help us to establish and provide NEAR with their experience and expertise on how to design our innovative financing policy and initiatives. So it's going directly, it's decentralizing it away from the NEAR Secretariat and working directly with communities to help us cultivate these tools that we want to see and use to, cultivate this shift to power.
Thank you. We are going to come back to that. That sounds like a nice, pretty picture, and we want to really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Over to Dr. Stigmata, and you've had a vast experience in the civil society and watched the different levels of transformation. And now as a key champion for philanthropy and community philanthropy, just share with us your perspective and just being at the local and also at the international level, and how you have been able to influence the conversation of shaping the development systems.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my colleagues, and congratulations. I've never been bold enough to do what I have been able to do. I'm a culprit of the systems. And if some of my brothers were reclaiming their space, I'm a grandma. So I will really celebrate my colleagues and the effort they have had. And I would like to expand the conversation a little bit to starting by the challenges I'm seeing in the words, in the language that we are using, which I do not understand as an ordinary citizen. So one thing which is very common and it always strikes me when someone mentions is the local, because I don't see any local aspects in my community, in my people, in our ways of thinking, in our ways of doing. And building on that, because of being culprits of the system, we have adapted that. We use it increasingly. And now we are here talking about the system we want, but start by talking about shifting power. Where do we shift this power from? To where? To what extent? How many of you agree with me that we are culprit of the situation we have today?
Yes. Sure.
Again, we are talking about having the system we want. But also we are talking about reimagining civil society with alternative resources. You know, systems are like human beings. You are born, you die. So if we are taking ourselves to this one system to the other, then we are taking ourselves to another box. So let's try to our level best to start now thinking outside the box. So I don't know if we want a system or what is it that our constituents want. Do they really want systems? What is it that they want? How many of you have been out there in the community and your constituent told you they want systems? How many says they want structures? So let's try to relate very much with these concepts that come with the development age, because that is the system which is dead. And we have two examples of the systems which are alive. The systems my colleagues are talking about. These are living systems. They have been there forever. They are rooted in our societies and in our culture. But again, because of the way development is done, we don't see it that way. So maybe that should be a starting point. And the power we are talking about, it should start with us. You know, everything starts with, if we were told to count, and I think sometimes you're told to count from 1, but our ancestors would count from 0. There is no 1 without 0, isn't it? So that 0 to 1, it's us. So let's start with this conversation. Let's start to assess our inner selves with this system we're talking about. If there were many of us who are striving to reduce inequalities and see just in our societies, I don't think today we'll be talking about the systems. We'll be talking about issues that are concerning our people. That is why I say I'm a culprit of the development system and the language, because I also say we want to change systems. But there is a lot that is being done. That is what I want to say in this space. From the civil society space to philanthropy, where I think most of you here in this group, if I ask you what is the difference between a civil society organization and a philanthropy development organization, would you tell? Would you really tell? How many, who wants to say that? Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. Should there be a difference? Should we label ourselves if we are really serving constituencies? Okay, that is another one. It's a food for thought. We can continue this discussion. But the work that is done by the groups, like our colleagues here, and some of you are here who may have time to share or not, it is called for. If we are to remain legit, we blame the government by passing different laws. Yes, they are doing that. But they have the loophole, and we are creating that loophole for them to do that. I'm not saying they should pass laws, but I'm saying if we are representing people and we are true civil society organizations, where are we? Where are our voices? Yesterday, someone asked how many of you are policymakers, and to my surprise, you did not want to raise your hand, and even the presenter was shocked to say, oh, stigmata, I am making my policy, I'm reclaiming this space unapologetically. So once we have decided to say and become a bridge and represent the people, then we have said we will not apologize. That is saying we understand what people need because we are living among them and we are listening. And that is to say, we want to save this humanity and improve these lives, not for them, not with them, but they should be the one to improve their own lives, and our task is to remove the barriers. But really look back 10 years, 20 years. How much impact are we making? And especially to areas which, if unlocked, they will save this humanity. They will improve the life of this humanity. But we see deepening inequalities, deepening poverty, injustices are rampant. So we really need to shift. Not change the system from one system to the other, but get out of the box and think differently. We should try to other ways not to create another system which will die tomorrow. How are we going to do that? I don't think that is our task. So with all this, what is happening here and what you are doing, let's try to wear the lens of gender, lens, class in everything we do, but let's agree that we are enablers. Because here when we hear, I hear people since I came, my angel, and I was really saying, where are we going with all these logos and egos? As my other friends would say. There is a lot that has been done, and let's learn from that. And if I'm given a chance, I will also bring this up beyond. And I know you want to talk about something, but let me say, Susan told us they did study in Tanzania. And I'll do no justice if I won't say the picture that was painted by that study in Tanzania, it's very similar with so many other countries in the continent. And that is reflected into what I've just said. We are not ready to acknowledge that we are culprits. We are not ready to acknowledge that the systems we are using, our practices, our cultures, our many good names which are all in the language that communities do not understand, do not help us. We are not readily available to look into and go outside the box and take opportunities around us. You still today hear organizations saying, yes, we saw this, and these are practitioners, yes, we saw this, and we wanted to change it, but our board, really, we are very good in pointing fingers on others. If that structure is irrelevant, then remove it when you go outside the box. If at all it is stopping you from being more inclusive, remove it. And lastly, what I would say is, which I don't want to talk about system today, but I think I want to talk about us taking bold conversations that are dignifying us and our own people. Let's not cut and paste. Thank you, Susan, and I'm sorry.
Very important and very critical. Because then, I think you've highlighted something that came out from the report, and I'll just read something small. The idea of alternative funding strategies tends to be understood as shifting from one kind of international donor or investor to another, with our own local resource mobilization rarely considered as an option. Right? And based on that, I think I want now to get us into the uncomfortable seat, because we really need to get out of the comfort and talk about this uncomfortable conversation, because that's what's going to make us bold to have this conversation. And I just want to say something that one of the respondents shared. They said, there's no funding to engage the communities on the program design. And likewise, there's no flexibility to make changes to suit the community's priorities. Local civil society organizations, hello, are we here? This is what was said. Local civil society organizations are not seeking out what is needed by the community. They're just fixing their priorities to the community. So I want to bring it back to Jonathan, because you've said you realized and you began a shift. And that shift at that community level that you are engaging in, I'm curious to hear from you. What are some of the pains you face? Because you're saying you don't want to do the way things have been done. But what are the pains you're facing in beginning to do that shift within communities and supporting communities to get recognized?
The first pain that I went through and I'm still going through is losing the respect. I lost the respect that I had. Remember, I was a country director in X organization, and I had all the privileges. I had all the money that I could go in a certain community and say, okay, we're going to do this. You have a problem on this, and I'm going to do that. So the change now is, I don't have money, you guys have money. Can we find a way to fix this problem? Then they see the same person who used to have a lot of money, but right now doesn't have money. See, that is the first pain that I went through, and I'm happy to go through it, because that's the reality, that's the real life that I got to live. The second is that I also lost an appetite into the sector, because every big organization that I knew by that time, and I still know today, if you approach them, actually, we are here, all of us, the first thing they will say, you don't have capacity. The same person who used to have the capacity at that time is the same person who doesn't have capacity today. That is another pain that I go through. And I'm not blaming anyone else apart from ourselves within this room, because we are the ones that have created that system, as Dr. Tega says. We are the ones that have created that system, and we are the ones that are still living in that. I wish we could change that, because if we continue having that kind of mindset, then there is no way we can make philanthropy a reality. We live in a status quo, and we want to embrace it and continue with it. It's unfortunate that if we continue like that, we cannot make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Father Sam, you talked about the fact that you're supporting local organizations to be able to, one, get recognized that the models that they establish are recognized within the humanitarian space. What are some of the challenges you face in having conversations, even with your fellow colleagues, in seeking to ensure that the space that they occupy, because this is a point of power taken, never given. So what aspects of that are you dealing with, even as you look at shifting that mindset within the humanitarian space?
Maybe from two angles, internally and then when we deal with internally within the NEAR Secretariat. So with my colleagues, some of the challenges have been around the organization and how it's formulated and the services that we provide to the network. And Jonathan touched on this issue of capacity building or capacity strengthening, whatever is the appropriate term for it. A lot of the work that engagement that we've had with local actors has made me see that there is a need for capacity strengthening when it comes to these issues of due diligence and compliance frameworks. If NEAR is acting as a facilitator and a convener of these spaces with donors, to be able to access those funds. And so the question internally is what services do we provide to the NEAR network, and can we take on this additional role? NEAR initially wasn't formulated as a grant-making network, but because of the demand of the members, we created the fund. The first one, which was the Change Fund, and then from there, the iteration of other funds that came out from that. So the Solidarity Fund in Syria, the Bulsho Fund in Somalia, and the very soon to be established the Nepal Fund in Nepal. And so it's this recognition, and maybe the pain point is what is our capacity versus what is the the needs of the network, and can we essentially meet those needs if we are saying we are facilitating, convening, incubating all of these ideas. And so maybe it's a question of growth in that respect. And then from the other side, when we are engaging with grantees and from various parts of the world, it's this question of demand articulation. And so the capacity for local actors to really identify and speak very confidently about what their priorities and their needs are when they are brought to the table with the donor, and to stand their ground, so to speak, about what it is that they want to be funded for in terms of whatever projects that they're looking at. So for me, that's the biggest thing. I've been with the NEAR network for about a year, but the one thing that's come through for me is this question of both the capacity internally within NEAR and externally of the members that we serve.
And I want to bring it to the audience, because then they are basically sharing how they are disrupting the system. I'm not sure that they are creating a new one. Stigmata said, systems we kill, that's not what's interesting. It's that we want to see the change happening. And I want to bring it to the audience, because as I said, we really want to look towards solution creation of the conversations we've had since our coming here on Wednesday. And one of the things I want to pick is from just to study some of the reflective questions that we put out, is that what are some of the ways that we can begin to appreciate local contribution, whether it's in money, whether it's in capabilities, and how do we begin ensuring that these contributions are recognized, are harnessed, and are pulled towards demonstrating the change in how development is being done. Another is, what are some of the new or maybe perhaps challenging aspects of this conversation that needs to happen? So that then we are talking about issues of power, we are talking about issues of shifting responsibilities, and we're talking about the aspects of transformation within development, and talking about the vision of the system we want. What are some of those things we need to begin doing as practitioners for this shift to actually happen, and for the system that we want to actually begin to show face? Okay. So I want us to begin having that conversation. So I'll do a quick round of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not seeing a gentleman, so I'll go with 5. And then maybe we might do another quick round of 5. You have exactly 30 seconds to engage. You have a minute or fame.
Okay, no pressure, no pressure. So on the kind of documentation that our communities are given, I think we need to document. I work specifically with community-based paralegals. And with community-based paralegals, you'll find that the church has probably donated land. My mother has probably donated also her piece of land. Somebody has donated an office, and they're also volunteering their time. All of that really needs to be documented and quantified. So over the years that we've been doing paralegal work on the continent, you might find that our contribution might be higher than what we're considering as global North contribution to our own development agenda. The other thing I'd like to talk about is if we're truly going to change the system. Now, and I'm sorry at this point, it sounds like a broken record, but I've said it in all the meetings I've gone to, the sessions I've gone to. If philanthropy is not going to fund or meaningfully, local philanthropy going to meaningfully fund structural injustices. Okay, for example, maternal death, building hospitals, all of that is good, but that is a manifestation of something that is broken. And those are democratic and governance questions. So if the local philanthropy is not really going to engage in social justice issues, as political and controversial as they are, we as social justice institutions will keep depending on the global north. But I'm not blaming anyone, because this is a conversation that needs to be had. What support do our local philanthropists need to be able to support social justice causes? I would have gone on, but
I am limited in my movement, because I've said the closer I get to you.
Yeah, thank you. We have attempted to shift power to the community. As an organization that is Transform Trade, we are transitioning from the traditional way of, supporting the community to focusing on community-led development, putting the community at the center of decision making. We are an international NGO, and we are at that point where we have to change, we have to shift the way we do things. And for the last 2 years, one of the things that we have learned, having gone to the community and given them that space of walking the journey together, is that the need of mindset change from our side as international NGO, and also the community, and appreciating that it takes time. It takes time, and it also requires a lot of flexibility. So how many of us are willing to be flexible? Flexibility in terms of time, flexibility in terms of resources, having unrestricted funding. Because as an organization, you have your strategic focus, but then you want to go to the community and co-create around your thematic area. So that's, for me, I find that's a challenge, because you are still putting the community in a box to fit within your strategic focus. So flexibility, and also we also have to invest in building the agency among the community that we want to support, so that they can be able to really have the confidence and take the space to be able to be heard, because they believe that they have those resources we want to mobilize. No, they don't, but we have to invest in changing their mindset.
I was about to ask you, what do you mean by agency? That question has been asked severally, so thank you for breaking it a little bit. Your 30 seconds of fame.
Happy Olal is my name from Social Justice Centers. First, I want to appreciate all the grassroots change makers who do their little things in our communities. Most of the time, you don't get to be appreciated, so kindly clap for yourself in my 30 seconds. Secondly, I have a question. You see, people do a lot of work in their communities. But when it comes to political power, you vie for a political seat where you think you are able to change the way things are done at the national level. Why is it that activists are never elected to positions? I hope, it's one of the things that have been disturbing my mind. I hope I can get an answer.
Thank you, thank you. That was 3.
Seem to have forgotten my
4 was here. 4 was here.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. My name is Alda Salomon. I'm from Mozambique. I work at an NGO called Tinzila, Sustainable Pathways. And we are both an NGO with a philanthropic program. So I don't know if I answered to a comment that was made earlier. I think that we can and we should do both. I see no problems in that. I've been reflecting about the concept of development. To what extent are we really using time to address and to discuss the concept of development with communities and through the community's perspective? We usually rush to communities, we take our own plans and programs, and we go there with an intention of mobilizing them to adhere to our programs. And very rarely we really initiate a discussion to find out what's their perspective, what are their perceptions, what are their priorities, and what kind of resources, how much time is needed for what kind of changes. So I think that we need to allocate, firstly position ourselves accordingly. We are there to capture what they think their development concept is, their priority are, and then we try to help and support and contribute to that, and not the other way around. But this requires time. And my concern is that usually we don't have enough time to engage in these discussions so that our plans reflect what they have shared with us and not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, 5, the gentleman.
Thank you so much. Let me start. My name is Jackson Yobare. I'm a regional manager working with Forum C, a Swedish international organization based in Nairobi. From the topic of the discussion, I also had a question. Is it what we want, or is what we need? Wants versus needs. Basic wants we can do without, but the needs, it's like a right. So I want us to interrogate, is it the change we need or the change we want? This is a reflection I've been thinking about. Capacity development versus capacity exchange. And nowadays we talk about, are you building the capacity or you are exchanging? And our take is, they have a lot of capacities which we need to learn from these institutions or communities, and therefore we are exchanging what we know and getting also what we don't know with them. In so doing, we progressively move to sustainable development. The other comment is on community resources, because we keep talking about these philanthropies. That communities also have their contributions. We have a unique project we call Public-Private Development Partnership. It's different from the PPPs in the sense the community and development actors have also a contribution. And this project is not 100% funded by any donor. So there is a contribution made by even communities. We are able to quantify their time. One of the colleagues mentioned about even their venues. And so you find a $10 million program, the community has a contribution of about 20% of that. And that has been ignored most of the time. So I want us to appreciate the new development models that come, but also puts the community at the center of all the interventions. Thank you.
Thank you. Contribution or question? To my resilient sister at the back. Okay, so I'll allow you and allow the gentleman at the corner there And the final two.
As I move to her, I'll also just highlight 30 seconds to say that it's clear that there's a bit of a shared understanding that we need some flexibility in how we think about resources. We have learned to do social justice work, flexibility of how we think about time, and she's looking at me, so I'm handing it to me.
Thank you so much for the consideration. So, this is weighing heavy on my heart because it's a disruptive reflection from the plenary. And it's Dr. Stigmata that provoked my mind to think about how to relate it to the discussion on the floor right now. And thank you, Doctor, for reminding us of our culpritism in terms of deconstructing and changing systems and structures, and I'm speaking as a culprit. So, in terms of questioning how the different actors within the philanthropic ecosystem are translating our mandate to the communities, to their activism, to their well-being, etc. And just stemming from the conversation that we had with Aga Khan Foundation, I particularly have a concern with how we are engaging with the private sector, with these multinational companies and corporates, in terms of translating their so-called, even beyond the social corporate responsibility, but their mandate, their existence within the African ecosystem into the communities. I'll give an example. I find Aga Khan one of the biggest capitalist and neoliberalist institutions in Africa. They will come and put up a hospital in Kampala. I'm from Uganda. I work with Urgent Action Fund Africa. They'll put up a hospital in Kampala. Now I have a so-called specialist facility. But who are accessing that facility? It's the rich. You know, if my grandmother is dying of cancer and there is no specialty in Mulango Hospital, I'm not going to be considered within that institution. So are we questioning? Are we disrupting? Are we fearlessly and boldly getting the systems within these institutions to trickle down, to translate to the realities in our context as Africans and within our communities? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being resilient. That's a very difficult question because I'm actually going to ask us to respond to how we are going to disrupt the system. Because we need to remember that we are also pointing fingers to ourselves as practitioners. We have rightfully confessed that we are part of a system. But we are also recognizing and celebrating that we are aware we need to shift and change the system. But how do you change the system from within? I think that's a true conversation we really need to begin to ask ourselves, right? And I think I would want us to just take a moment, because as we said, we are being solution-oriented in this process. And I want us to just take the remaining minutes to be able to ask ourselves, how am I thinking of disrupting the system? Because that's what you're doing. And I like your example, right? Because we need to recognize that, and you've used the Aga Khan, but we can use our own selves. We are here talking about systems and structures, yet we, one way or another, we also propagate those systems and structures. So how are we going to begin disrupting the system? Okay? So back again to our little tables. Okay? And I want you to begin sharing how are you disrupting the system to a system that you want. And then we shall come to talk about the answers and the questions that were raised as we finalize with the panelists. So over to you. How are you going to disrupt the system to be the system that you want to see? at your tables. You have 3 minutes. And allow me to come back to the panelists. Because I'm curious, just by show of hands, how many of us talked about mindset? Nice. Okay? How many of us talked about our approaches? Okay, I like. How many of us talked about our positioning? How many of us talked about the positioning of the community? Aha! How many of us, I mean, we were right on report, Jenny. How many of us talked about counter-narratives? Okay? Uh-huh. How many of us talked about the infrastructure? What is that? What is infrastructure? Yeah, one of those big words. It's not the road. It's not a bridge. It's that system that we keep talking about that we want to break down. So how many of us talked about the ways that we do our work, but the ways that we engage, the need to make sure we are recognizing one another, the flexibility of time, the aspects of how we finance our processes, all that falls under the infrastructure. Thank you very much. And so I want to pass it over to the panel. I am now way over time. The keeper is not even laughing with me anymore. In fact, I'm ignoring them. The purpose I have my back to them. So, please, encouraging us to go and do. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. The way I see the atmosphere of the room is that shift the power, community philanthropy is no longer a hashtag. It is a practice already. It has to continue in the same energy as we have seen in the room. And therefore what I'm asking, when we are back at home, let's make a pyramid. Go, apart from yourself, try to find other 2 people, 3 people. Give them the whatever you have felt from here, and ask them again to also, each one of them, find other 2 or 3 people. In so doing, we'll be creating a pyramid which is very strong to last for 100 years to move this agenda. Thank you.
What is there to something? And there is quite a bit that at Mir, but I would narrow it down to celebrating the development of processes that center communities and the communities that we serve, and making the cornerstone of every approach, every conversation that we have with the stakeholders that we engage on a daily basis, and through collective action. So we have a platform called South to South, which is where the members can come and engage with each other, and that's really been a critical and key to getting this conversation going on shifting the power and putting communities at the center of, the transformation that we want to see. And as we push for that shift, I think sustainability has been something that we are carefully considering in all of the interventions that we are co-creating with the community. And yeah, I just don't think that there is going to be any shift without sustainability, meaningful sustainability planned growth.
Thank you. Wow, this has been great learning. But for me, I wanted to start by truly saying, let's continue to try to our level best when we talk of philanthropy to consider our ways of giving. And these kind of conversations are very important. the APN, the EAPN, and many others that are taking place, I want to draw you into two things. One, there is a program that we are implementing in partnership with the Global Fund and others, many of you here, called Giving for Change. Please Google it, because we are putting all this conversation into practice, and that is a program that is testing the practices and acts of doing things differently, but it has set a very bold mission to change the way development is done, from the bottom up and top down approach, and see how we can meet the system at the center and see what is that system looking like when people are at the center of their own development. And lastly, just for everyone, Africa Philanthropy Network's mission, which is all of us here, is to reclaim the power that is in African giving. And when we say African philanthropy, so it is time, treasure, it is resources, and non-financial, importantly, because that is what we mainly have, including the financial. So when we say reclaim, we reclaim our voice, we reclaim our ability to act, and resources we have around us. And lastly, when we talk about power, you can interrogate that and interpret it in your own way. We talk of power in the form of urgency. And believing that there is a lot of power in the way of giving, and you will all agree with me here, you all give. So when you give, from now going onward, your time, your treasure, your asset, the resources to the community, to yourself, to your children, to everyone, question. What is it that you're giving? Why are you giving? And to whom? And what change will that giving make? Because we give every day, but our giving is less impact. We have to organize ourselves and give for impact. Send you much love, because philanthropy is love, and we love you all.
A round of applause to our able champion. And thank you all for taking the time to be here. And I just want to end. I think we love saying money makes the world go round. But I think in our conversation today is people define the world that we want to see. And without that, then money is nothing. And I want to appreciate us. And thank you all for being here. And looking forward to future conversations. We'll encourage you to take time to read the study. It's available on the Global Fund for Community Foundation's website. Reimagining Civil Society in Tanzania, resourcing in Tanzania. So karibuni sana to lunch.